Comes around every couple of years, this one, Henry, doesn't it? The banning of the smacking thing, and then we get into the debate, well, what constitutes the smacking of a child, the distinction between assault and smacking, are there certain circumstances where it's OK? The list goes on. Is it down to the government, though?
I mean, I'm always slightly baffled when this comes around every time that it is not illegal in some respect, because it just feels so out of keeping with everything else that's happened. As you say, you gave all those examples of government over the past 20 years, and then you discover that actually this hasn't been banned yet. I think the issue with it is that even sustained corporal punishment, regular corporal punishment, does not seem to be how people parent, right? In 2024, for the most part. So I think the problem with this, if you criminalise it, is that we know that the police love going after easy targets, and a lot of the state like going after easy targets. So what it means is that you'll have a parent who, strikes their kid once, which is bad, but like does a slap on the arm or whatever, and that's the one. They're like, OK, we're going to get them. We're going to get them. That'll boost our stats. That's a child abuse thing gone up, and that will divert resources away from the much harder cases of problem families with sustained abuse. And we have seen time and again real failures to protect children who are being properly abused, baby P, the horrifying case of baby P, and all of that. So the question is the damage that's being done that would be theoretically caught by this worth potentially the diversion of scarce police and social care resources into, let's be honest, into policing slip-ups by middle-class families that get reported, rather than investigating sustained abuse in households where that is not going to necessarily obviously come to people's attention?
It's interesting because the examples that are usually given are, kid tries to put their hand in a plug socket, the parent taps the hand of the child. Is that child abuse? Is that reasonable chastisement? Is it an emergency reaction? There's so many grey areas on this one. It's pretty hard to legislate for that. Yeah. We are dealing with kids, kids are, naughty and sometimes stupid.
Yeah, and we do have it fits into a bigger debate about parenting, right? Like you have a whole generation, the previous generation, which has kind of shifted away from this sort of authoritarian parenting that they received, and they're trying to do the whole being friends with their kids thing. I can't imagine any of those parents wanting to smack their children, so I'm not sure who's doing it, and I suspect that might be another problem with this bill, is that you might, and I don't know, but you might find that it ends up criminalising certain communities over others or whatever else. I couldn't, but as you say, the problem is, how do you draw it up? Like, especially if you did what D'Souza wanted, which is you give them exactly the same protections against assault.
As you do an adult.
You don't actually have to physically hit someone for assault. That's battery.
That's
like
true.
Assault is menaces.
Yes.
Right? And if you're a parent and you can't even at what point do you end up with somebody yelling at their kids and all of a sudden that's abuse? And we've seen this, the boiling frog approach to what's abuse.
Well, yes, and I was listening to a phone in this morning and a guy was talking about his kid headbutting him and running at him. And I've had this as a parent, where your kid either sometimes in anger, sometimes they're just playing, but, in anger, your child will push or shove, or their head will go into your chest when you're trying to get their clothes on you, whatever. Yeah. And he said he slapped his child's leg as a result of this. And nobody in the room, literally in the room, there was his parents, I think, and his partner, nobody thought that was at any level abuse. The child stopped and had a little cry because it was an adult who doesn't do this very often, chastising the child with a slap. Now, the counter to that is you can't educate a child about violence by employing violence. But what do you do in a situation?
I think actually, and this is a broader problem than just with children, is that we've developed a very all or nothing approach to violence, right? Where as you say, any violence can't be a lesson, and therefore what we've seen is, for example, in mental health, there's now a huge aversion to restraints, which makes caring for some people incredibly difficult and time-consuming. If they won't eat, for example, I heard one example: a girl ends up needing about 14 staff during her meal times because they won't restrain her. And with children in schools, for example, there are examples where you have children, very badly behaved children, rampaging around a school, and teachers can't physically intervene, even to the point of just sort of grabbing them and saying, get out of this classroom. And so we do, I think, need to have a slightly more grown-up conversation about you're not, hitting children is wrong, I think, but the idea that any and all physical force used against a child in certain circumstances is impermissible. But the problem you have with criminalising is the example you just gave. In context, that made perfect sense, right? With the situational awareness of what was going on. But if that gets written down and filed as a report, that's
out of context. Person A smacked child B. You get that. But also, I would imagine as well, Henry, that no matter how much legislation you have, if you've got an abusive parent, they're just going to carry on being abusive, whatever the legislation says. It's already illegal to assault a child. It's already illegal to beat up a child. That's not going to stop because of this law.
No, and that's what comes back to what I said at the beginning. My worry about this, which I have some sympathy for in principle, is that you will just end up with the police having a load of easy cases that they can go after to pad their numbers. You get lots of middle-class parents dragged through the courts, and then they will actually just divert resources from genuine abuse.
Yeah.